as you guys know, the number of couples that are disclosing their fertility problems are increasing. Studies show that at least 12% of women between the ages of 15 to 45 have some kind of infertility issue, and up to 9.6% of male are suffering from some type of infertility issue. We know that in a given couple, that 50%, it's almost 50-50 between the men and the women. So we got a lot to talk about, because even though this topic is clearly very much a national issue, and someone even said global issue, but we're going to focus on what's going on in the US for now. We do know that I should ask you guys, do you think that the experience of a couple of color, a couple who is of color, is any way different or unique compared to the general population? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, doesn't environment have something to do with that? I would think, no?
I think in a lot of ways. I mean, like you said, environmental toxins, which we talk about are endocrine disruptors. A lot of people, when you talk about where certain populations live, inner city, the certain type of pollution and chemicals that you're exposed to, that's not something that people think about that often. Also, I think when you're talking about people of color, like brown people, Latinos, there's also a lot of stigma when you talk about infertility, especially when it's not on the woman. So say the woman's been checked out and everything's okay, and it comes to the man now being checked out, there's a lot of resistance. And I think that's across the board, but maybe because I'm Latina, I see it a lot in my Latino people. When it comes to talking about men and fertility, that's a big, like, no, men and vasectomy and like sterilization and men and fertility. So I do think that depending on the culture and the people of color, they may experience it, because white Americans tend to have the stereotype of being more open-minded about specific things and more willing to look at specific things. Not saying that that's the truth for everybody, but they do. That's something that is kind of assumed.
I completely agree with you. I do find that I work almost exclusively for my whole career with the Latino population, and it is hard getting them semen analysis.
Yeah,
it is hard. And it's not even just hard getting it from the guy, it's hard to get my patients to tell their partners to go do a semen analysis. And this is why I really prefer to see, when it comes to infertility, I really prefer to see a couple rather than a patient, just simply because we can hopefully have some discussion about these barriers and educate. But it is absolutely hard. It is one of the hardest things to do. It's cultural. There's a lot of stigma related to it.
Yeah, because what you mean? I've got fertility issues. I'm the man. It's not me. That's like, that's this thing. It's like, well, it takes two, boo.
And and then oftentimes they think that fertility has to do with the system not working, right?
Right.
Like your system could be working, because it's always like I please her, like she be like fooling and I like
it's always the penis, right? It works. We're not talking about it don't work. It'll still work.
It's like we're not talking about the system not working. We're talking about the plumbing, right? Like you can still have the system work very well, and she's not saying that she's not pleased, that she's not happy. Like it's not about the power of it; it's about the functionality of it and what's being produced. And so I do think I would love for us to have a conversation with some men on that topic, because I think we really need to really have a heart-to-heart, transparent conversation, break down some of those issues. But to your point, I do think that women of color in particular have a very unique experience for a number of things, right? We mentioned environmental factors. We mentioned, medical history, or did we say that? Well, if we didn't, I'm gonna say that. Medical problems, right? We tend to not have as much opportunity to optimize our health, to be healthier. We tend also to be challenged by reproductive issues, endometriosis, fibroids issues. Where is all of this coming from, Dr. Joe? What do you think about all those disparities?
I think it goes back to slavery. And why is because at that time, Black women's bodies were used as baby making machines. they were being raped by the fellow slaves, either by direction of the masters or by the masters themselves, in an effort to produce like animals, to have more fodder, to have more bodies to work the land, to sell, whatever the case may be. But as mothers and as they are growing these babies, they know that this is part of them, and this baby that they're about to have, they are not going to be able to protect. They're not going to be able to keep safe. They're not going to be able to do anything in this child's life. They have absolutely no control. And so I think in turn, besides trying to not have these babies that they may have already been pregnant with, they have started finding ways, praying, however, to will their bodies to no longer produce. And I believe that this is something that then got passed down unknowingly in the generations, meaning they have no idea of what the future is. They have no idea that we would be here in this type of future, not in that slavery. And they did not want to have any more. They did not want to continue that system. They did not want to continue to feed into it unwillingly. And so they've now passed down this desire, this desire to no longer be able to. And so it's now showing up in our bodies. And yes, though not every gene that we have becomes expressed, but whether it's through trauma, whether it's through disease, whether it's through environmental factors, we now have these genes that are turning on in our systems, and we're now having this rash of infertility. So whereas the stigma was, oh yeah, we're breeders, you just get them pregnant and they go, we're now having almost like that backlash in the system where it's like, no, there will be no children from this. We don't know what's going to happen. There's not going to be anything else left. So I feel like this is kind of where we're getting some of that at this point.
I mean, like 100%, like you were saying, it's like the study of epigenetics, which says,
right,
that's what a lot of these studies were coming from, saying as to why Black American women were being so affected by negative adverse outcomes. Then I would agree with you that if all of that can come down, why not this inadvertent desire or to protect yourself, right? For self-preservation. So
and for the generations.
I mean, and then also like, let's not pretend that that could not be expressed today. We may not be in the same situation we were in centuries ago, but maybe these last 4 years in very specifically were very triggering for a lot of us. I mean, I think you also have to take into account the age of people. There's so many things that are affecting us now. There's so many outside factors. And also, like you said, the stereotype that we are breeders. I didn't realize that. I believe that myself. When I think about infertility, I very rarely think about women of color. I always think like, hey, women of color, we killing it with the fertility. Like we have babies. Latinas, Blacks, all of us who are on the spectrum of brown. I realize that I have that thought. I was thinking to myself, out of all of the Black women I know, I don't think anybody has struggled with fertility. And then when I really suss it out, I'm like, oh, yes, they have. They had this or they had that. Yes, they ended up getting pregnant, but they definitely struggled. So I think that there's a lot of that too, this idea that we don't suffer from these things, when in reality, it can be quite isolating, because apparently Black American women have twice as high the rates of infertility than American white women, which is, I'm not gonna lie, I'm in the field and I'm shocked.
To your point, how many of you know someone who personally, because I have to take my profession out of it clearly, so how many of you personally know someone who struggles with infertility?
I could probably speak on that. I don't think I had personal, problems with infertility, but I know at the time when me and my husband was trying to have our second child, we struggled. It took about two to 3 months, and we ended up having it. I don't know if stress could be a part of it. We were stressing, and when you plan stuff, not always it comes out the way and everything. So I know that problem, but I know from my history of my mom and grandma and all that stuff. Well, for my mom per se, she had kids. She honestly told me she didn't plan none of us. So therefore it just came like that. So for people that don't plan, it comes like that. For people that plan, I think with all the stress and everything that's going on with their body and stuff, that has something to do with that. Back on what Dr. Joe said about from way back in slavery, some of our bodies said, nope, we ain't finna do that. So I'm saying, come on, let's go. She ain't even paying attention.
I mean, Karen, I think you raised an interesting point about expectation, right? So the
Mhm.
expectation for most women is that, and for most couples, is that you are able to get pregnant any month you want to get pregnant. And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't happen like that, even in the most fertile women. It actually, we don't consider someone to be infertile if they're less than age 35, unless they've been trying for more than a year, and then 35 upwards if they've been trying for more than 6 months with regular sex, of course, because if your man is in another country, that doesn't count. Okay, if you're not having regular sex, you cannot be classified or should not be classified as being infertile.
Vaginal sex.
Vaginal, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You
yes.
just got to be clear.
Just to be clear, because the objective is.
Which other way can you get pregnant?
You can.
But
Right.
you have to be specific sometimes.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Job. Yes, regular vaginal sex, or just some option in which the egg can meet the sperm, which means sperm has to enter the reproductive tract of the female. Right. Biological or cis or whatever you want to transgender, but of the biological female, there has to be some entrance of sperm into her reproductive tract in order for there to be conception. And so for some women, it may not happen the first or the second month or the third month. And that is still considered to be normal. But some people do have the expectation that you can get pregnant just like that. And even in the healthiest woman,
I'm not gonna lie. We were gonna have a third, and we tried for 4 months, and it didn't happen because with the first two, it happened like that, right? And after that, I was like, "It's not meant to be. We're not having no more." Even though statistically, that's normal. I mean, I'm a 36-year-old woman. My husband's 43, so statistically, that was totally normal, right? So
1,000% normal. And you're a different woman, right?
Huh?
And you're a different woman.
And I'm a different.
Yes, you're a different woman. No, it's true. Like a lot of times people don't, I tell my patients this all the time. The woman you were at baby number one is very different than the woman you are now. The woman you are now has a toddler, an infant. Like, girl, you stressed out. Like, you tired. Your body is not the same, and a lot of women also deal with the fact that we're older, right? Because the time difference between baby number one and baby number two, maybe 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years, so your eggs are older and definitely got.
Don't say it to me. Don't say it to me.
Sorry. Don't mean to tell y'all this, but it's true. It's so true. And it's so important for women to know what's normal, what's not normal. One, so that the people who are having normal experiences are reassured. Right. And so people who are not having normal experience will seek the help immediately. So that's because, as we know, time is a factor, you guys. Them eggs. We cannot stop those clocks. We have not figured that out yet.
Well, and also they don't talk enough about the men too. The men and their sperm, like their age, their body weight. Apparently, being overweight and obesity, the heavier you are as a man, the less normal and the less amazing your sperm are as well. So it's all of it. It's all of us. I think we gotta also put the focus also on the partner, because it does take two.
And there's been more research that shows that over the past couple of decades, like the sperm count in men has lowered across the board. So the amount and quality of sperm that was produced by like the grandfathers is different now from what the grandsons and great grandsons are experiencing, and it's less. So
in 40 years,
go with a lot of
like 40 years.
Environment. Right.
That's crazy.
Yep.
It is absolutely, you guys are right. It is absolutely insane. So it's telling us, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? We're a less healthy nation. We're bigger. We have more comorbidities, more hypertension, more diabetes.
More stress.
Sedentary life.
More like consistent stress. We're older, right? Everybody's trying to do more and kind of plan for their kids later.
Sedentary lifestyle too.
Yes, much more sedentary because everybody's on a computer or some type of screen. And y'all, the whole attitude towards the work culture is shifting. And it's I'm not going to name the country, but there's a country that has the 996. Have you guys heard about the 996? So their citizens, especially those who are in the tech community, they work 12 hours per day, 6 days per week, and that is the norm and the expectation. So even that, and I pray to God that don't come here. If nothing else, let's learn that we need life balance. But if that is a sign of the trend to come, even our work life is getting worse, right? And so, but let's talk about that implicit bias, because some people may say, you don't encounter racism every day, right? So what is this chronic stress? Where is this chronic stress coming from? How do you answer people who doubt that you're having this daily experience of chronic stress related to underlying racism?
It's on day-to-day basis. It's your lifestyle. It's how you do things, whether you have children already or you don't, you plan on having children. Your day-to-day lifestyle. So everything comes in between of stress. It causes stresses everywhere you go. We have healthy stress and we have, bad stress, but it's learning how to balance all that. And it takes time. It's not going to be an overnight thing, and to learn how to do it. So that's how
I don't know, Karen. I think it's really hard for it. I had some unfortunate news yesterday. A friend, someone I know, had committed suicide, and I thought about it, and I was like, it's really, and I feel like it's maybe this year in particular, because I've had friends who have dying and may or may not. Yeah, anyway, it's been a lot. But needless to say, when I thought about it yesterday, part of my thoughts as I was going to work and I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't feel like I've ever had a break, right? Like, I feel like it's always this ongoing, because I feel like because we live under such conditions where it's so institutionalized, we're more likely to have people who are sick. We're more likely, and so sicker people more likely to die. We're more likely to have people who lose jobs. We're more likely to personally know people who have traumatic experiences. And so it's ongoing. So yeah, I don't necessarily go to work every day and have an overt racial experience, but every day of my life, I'm dealing with some manifestation of some experience that underlies, that where the underlying issue is racism, because racism is why we're disproportionately affected by so many things. So I really don't feel like I ever get a break. I feel like I always get a lot of bad news.
Not only that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tessa, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, not only that, but when you talk about things that affect our health, our hormones going up and down, our endocrine receptors, our flight or fight responses, ours get triggered a lot more. I know mine do, especially the older I've gotten. I see a police car and I'm like, oh Jesus, please let it be okay. My kids at school, when there are things that happen at school, my initial question is always like, wait, is this like the fair normal response? Is this because of it? Like, you're kind of always going through things in your mind like, wait, is this something else or is this normal? Sometimes you don't even know, because I think a lot of people don't know this, but most Black people aren't trying to make everything about race. Most of the time you're trying to make it not about race. You're trying to be like, this can't be because I'm Black. Please don't let this be because I'm like, oh my God,
we want to break. We want to break.
Yeah. And so I think there's that. It's this, it's just like you have peaks of stress. It's incredibly unhealthy. And it really wears. It's this weathering, like you hear some people say, on the soul, on the body, and everything, to have this constant underlying just level of stress all the time that you don't even notice it half the time anymore. It's just always there. You kind of feel like you're always walking on your tippy toes. You're just not sure why. It's that.
And it happens early. I mean, some of us grew up in the inner city, so we have the inner city experience. And I feel like that happens early. And I feel like that imprinting starts really, really early in life.
And we're exposed to a lot more stuff. We're exposed to poverty at a really young age. So especially if you're growing up in the inner city, you're growing up impoverished, you're being exposed to probably like food deprivation, food deserts, not having access to, clean water, flint, hay, like things of that nature. Like you go to school and you get like really poor nutrition. Like a lot of those things when I was young was very normalized. And I just assumed that everybody was struggling like that.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I do think, like, for me growing up, violence was normalized.
Very much so. Seeing the police, getting people arrested, my neighbors selling drugs. I thought that was okay. I thought everybody's neighbors sold drugs.
Dead bodies.
Yes. Needles, always ditching needles. And my mom saying, be careful, there's a needle there. And I'm like, oh, that was when I was 6. I remember like the drug paraphernalia on the floor. That's not normal.
Listen, at one point, going to bed and hearing gunshots was a norm.
Lullaby.
Yes, it was a norm. And, you know,
here in LA, it was the helicopter, the AKA the Gettysburg. It was always, I mean, sure, Karen, right? You're from LA, right? Always listening to the helicopters. Always.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
And I do believe, and the reason I brought up the younger years is because I see a lot of my teenagers, and they already have diabetes, they already have high blood pressure, they already have high cholesterol, and they have hormonal dysfunctions. You know, polycystic ovarian syndrome is way more common amongst us, and I do think that all these things are being triggered by our ongoing chronic stress experiences slash traumatic experiences, because some of them are more than just stress, right? You know, having people who suddenly die from gun violence in your neighborhood, that is a trauma that you are experiencing. So I do think that this, imprinting to Dr. Job's point, not only is it multi-generational, but the genes turning on, I think, happens very early, which is why we're seeing these proportionate rates of hormonal dysfunction, endometriosis, being diagnosed very early in women of color. And then what about the disparities of getting help? What do you guys think about that?
Oh, absolutely. It's unfortunately, we know that Black women are going to be down at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of funds. So when we talk about getting paid, we know that, actually, I had a patient discuss this with me the other day, that a Black woman has to work something like 589 days to the 365 days that a white man would have to work to get the same amount of money, right? And so we know that there's going to be less funding available because we're not getting paid as much, even if we're doing the same job. And if we're still trying to make it, we don't have all that extra funds pushed aside to be able to do any of the treatments that might be necessary, because we know that treatments for infertility are not going to be cheap. They are not cheap. And I know, as Dr. Moore, you can give us the lovely amounts. I don't remember them, but it's not cheap.
It's expensive. It's in the thousands, right?
That's it. Something from like 20. It's like something from 20 to 40,000 per treatment.
You can get anywhere from, you can get some that are 10, 12,000 per treatment, and up to Olivia's point, up to 25,000. That's about the median range for it. And that's per cycle, right? So that's assuming that your yield is sufficient. But a lot of women, because we have these underlying issues, even the yield is not sufficient, right?
And not only that, like the cost of it personally, emotionally, and to the couple. I mean, those are serious. I know a lot of people my age, you know, we're called the elder millennials, which is another conversation for another day.
What does that mean?
That we're like old millennials. I don't know. But anyway.
Don't speak for yourself. I'm just like...
All right, well, me and my friends and my cousins, I have a lot of women, you know, in my cohort who are now freezing their eggs and doing all these kind of things for the exact same reasons that you're talking about, right? There's the physical reasons. There's also the relationship, the stress, the career. I mean, I feel like a lot of people who are childbearing age, they confuse this, y'all. They were like, you got to get careers, you got to do better, you got to do all these things and everything will come to you. And it was like, nobody actually said there would be sacrifice. Maybe if you worked so hard this way, you might sacrifice a little bit here. And if you wanted family, you would have to sacrifice a little bit for career here. And so like, there was this thing that I think for a lot of us born in like the 70s, early 80s, was this thing of like, you could have it all if you just followed this formula.
And they sold us a dream.
Yes, only to come to find out, now we're all almost 40 and everybody's trying to have babies or a little bit over 40. And it is, you know what I mean? Like a lot.
And you have all this school debt from grad school, from nursing school.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, and then you're supposed to rear children and put them in private school and put them in extracurricular activities. How are you supposed to have the financial means to do all of that?
And the gag is, you guys, that the outcome and the success of your infertility treatment, if you're able to afford it emotionally and financially, as we've been talking, is impacted by your age. So,
Of course.
so infertility is not, people look at infertility treatments as the end result, like, oh, yes, like the 100%. First of all, it's not 100%. And a
Nope.
lot of people don't know the differences in the different rates, right? So they ask, well, what's your success rate? And you really have to know what you're asking when you're asking about the success rate for a fertility services. So there's success rate of retrieval, there's success rate of
Implantation, right?
There's success rate for those who are freezing their eggs, success rate of being able to defrost the eggs, and those that those that survive the freezing process, and then those that survive the thawing process. And then there's a difference in the success rate of having and resulting in a live pregnancy. Those are all different numbers. And so making sure that you know what numbers you're asking for and what numbers you're receiving when you're really making these decisions. And to your point, you guys, how many of y'all have seen an infertility clinic in the hood?
No, they don't take Medi-Cal. They don't take public health insurance.
They are not at all. So there's even implicit bias in terms of even the access and location of fertility services, that for still a lot of states.
Which speaks to the privilege and speaks to the the socioeconomic status that you have to be a part of to even be able to have those services readily available to you. You know what I mean? So what happens if a couple making $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year that live, in South LA or any other inner city, they don't have the means to have those services. So therefore they won't be able to have a family because they're low income and their Medi-Cal is not going to cover that. I think like most insurances don't even cover like fertility.
No.
Like they don't.
And there's no mandate.
Even if you're not in the industry, say you're house poor, say you live in a good neighborhood because you work really hard, right? I mean, a lot of people don't have free flowing cash like that, right? Even if you're doing everything right and you work really hard, you don't just have an abundance of thousands of dollars available to you like that.
Right.
Child, I work in
going to debt.
Let's say that again. Let's say that again. Like people just assume that you are sitting on. No. Ask those of us who work in the in community medicine. But you guys are 100% correct. And going back to a point that Olivia made, which I don't want to overlook, is there's also stigma of disclosing that you have fertility issues. So a lot of women would have to go through it by themselves, right? And it's hard. Those injections, they ain't easy. Okay. I mean, I shared with you guys before I went through the retrieval process, and let me tell you, that thing is emotionally hard. Okay, emotionally very hard. Matter of fact, I was going to show y'all one of my vials, I forgot. It is very much emotionally hard to go through, and a lot of women of color just don't feel comfortable even sharing their experiences with people yet. Like we still have so
I
far
agree
to
with
go.
that. My aunt, my mom's sister, the only way she was able to conceive both of her two children was through IVF. My auntie couldn't get pregnant for 13 years. And she happened to be married to a man that was a truck driver that drove cross country that was making about 80 to 100,000 a year. And they were able to afford it. And he had to pay about, I think each time that she did IVF, about $20,000 each time for both of her pregnancies. And she didn't get pregnant with her first daughter till I think she was 39. And then the second one was like at 42.
Wow.
So, and she didn't talk. It was very much taboo. It was, I think she felt a lot of shame because, and then she would say this to my mom and to her other sisters, like, you guys all naturally had babies. Like, you guys just pop these babies out and I'm like you guys and I can't pop these babies out. And I guess she internalized her infertility. Like there was something, deficit, like there was a deficit in her. There was something wrong, inherently wrong with her, that she was a Caribbean, Central American woman from Honduras, and she couldn't produce babies. And that's all we do is we have all these babies. And it's like, I remember when I was young, she would cry and she'd be like, I want a kid. And, the only way she got one was that when she got older, she was married for almost 22 years until she had this baby with this man. Because she got married really young in her early 20s and didn't have her kids till she was almost 40.
Wow, bless her heart that she had a successful IVF process.
She did.
In her older years also. Like that in itself is a miracle.
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily have successful outcomes in the older group as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but she did have to take all those. I remember she would inject herself all those medications. It was a process. You have to go to the hospital. It was like a whole thing. It was
even with those injections, you can still not successfully have a pregnancy, and that's what a lot of women don't realize, that especially if you're in your 40s, certainly if you're hitting your 50s, hitting menopause, menopausal years, it is really hard to even have successful outcomes, even with IVF. So bless her heart that she was able to have those outcomes, and she may not be aware of the stats regarding that. But it's really hard, and if you're not doing it with support, it is just even the mental struggle of getting through it is very hard. The mental struggle of getting through, because every time you inject yourself, you are faced with your circumstances, right? Every injection, listen, my thighs were black and blue. Okay, my stomach was black and blue, and I wasn't going through the whole process like the patients or people who have the whole infertility process and have to go through that, and then have to mentally get themselves ready for that phone call to see whether or not, you know, the whole embryos have how many embryos they have, and then the other phone call to confirm, or the other visit to confirm whether or not they are pregnant. I mean, it's a lot. It's a
heavy.
lot.
It's heavy. It's heavy.
And it's a lot to spend and then end up with nothing. And, you know, people deal with a lot of self-esteem issues related to infertility, body image issues related to infertility, relationship issues. Like, how much does it impact the relationship of a couple to go from, like, y'all thought the pandemic tested your relationship? Okay. And it did. But infertility process, that affects relationships, period. And one of the things I definitely recommend for couples to do is to have that conversation. Like, one of the first things I ask patients is, did y'all have a conversation yet? Because we not having a conversation until y'all have a conversation, because then my conversation depends on your conversation. And the conversation should include, how far are we going to go? How far are we willing to go?
That's a great question. Because sometimes the other party might not want to go, maybe I feel like, let's just say I'm the wife and I'm committed, but the husband not want to endure that journey. It might be too painful, or vice versa. Maybe the husband wants to persevere and keep trying, and then the wife says it's too painful. Like, I remember reading Gabrielle Union's book, right? She had multiple miscarriages before she went the route. Right? Like, a lot. I lost count. I think it's like 7 or 8.
Yeah, I thought it was 9, but it's up there. It's somewhere up there.
I can't even imagine going through that many miscarriages and then finally coming to the realization with my husband, okay, I think this isn't going to be it for us. We're going to have to try the other route, which is the stational right. Yeah, correct. Yeah. But I can only imagine how painful and emotionally draining that must have been for her. Like, and for a lot of women that are going through that must be devastating. And I'm sure that takes a toll on their mental health too, right? Like,
oh yeah. I'm glad you brought up that point, Eunice. I definitely advocate for, because a lot of my patients are like, oh, but I feel fine. I'm mentally fine. I'm like, listen, you're about to go on a journey that's going to bring up some stuff that you need to make sure that you have your village set up to make sure that you have your safety net, because it is such an emotional journey.
And the hormones also add to that. You're hopped up on hormones. Like, if you think PMS is bad, the hormones.
Listen. I actually, that was, to your point, Olivia, that was actually one of the things that I was like, how am I gonna be on these hormones? But that's why I thought they didn't work. Because I didn't feel that whole ride that people normally experience. And so I actually was not sure that I was going to have a successful outcome at all. Because one of my girlfriends, I'm gonna call you out, but I'm not going to describe who you are. When she was going through her process, and she was going through it for medical reasons, I was like, girl, call me when you're done, because you on Listen, those hormones will challenge you. Look,
I mean,
My
I
cousin, my cousin
I be
just
tripping
did
right
it.
before I get my period.
My,
PMS
my
hormones.
cousin, my cousin just did egg retrieval. She said those hormones. Wow.
listen, and of course, I had to be cooked. My eggs had to be cooked a little bit longer. I was like, of course, of course, of course, of course. You know, the plight of the healthcare provider is always that you don't encounter. You'll be the, of course, right?
The textbook of everything that goes the other way. That's you. That's you.
Of course, right? And so I was like, I gotta still be on these hormones. And it's so expensive, let me tell you. But it, to your point, everyone, I mean, it is a very unique experience for a woman of color. And I wish we had more resources. I'm glad for the resources that are out there, like Fertility for Colored Girls and organizations like them who support the unique experience of a woman of color. But we definitely have far to go to try to make these services equitable, so that I don't have to go to Beverly Hills. I don't have to go to Park Avenue. I can actually have access right in my neighborhood to these services. Like, I don't have to be of a higher status to be justified in order to be able to have children, right? Because in a way, you're
able-bodied.
Say that
or able-bodied.
Or able-bodied, exactly. That it is an opportunity for everyone who's willing to, like, we talk often about kids that don't have parents that are willing to care for them, and it's like, here are people who are willing to love a child and to nurture a child, and for issues and circumstances out of our control, they are denied that right, denied that opportunity. So yeah, I definitely think this is a topic we really should be talked about. I would love to hear the men's perspective of it. So if you're watching this video and you have your husband and you have been through this experience, or you know a guy who has, please let us know. We would love to have them on the couch because their experience is a very unique experience. And some of their issues overlap with our issues and our circumstances, but some are very unique to the manhood and how the manhood and infertility intersects. So thank you guys for being on here today and for sitting with us and having this conversation. Hit us up below. Let us know what you think about the experience of a woman of color and infertility. In the meantime, Eunice, hit us up as to where they can find you.
Oh, you can find me on Instagram at Eunice DA Therapist at Instagram. So Eunice the Therapist on IG.
Y'all are so funny. We haven't done this because we're doing these tapings less often. Y'all done forgot your handles. You're not the only one. You're not the only one. Talking about forgetting handles, Dr. Trissa, where can they find you?
TrissaJob.dpt on Instagram.
Awesome. And Karen, where can they find you?
What a Touch on IG.
Awesome. And our fabulous midwife, where can they find you?
Also on Instagram at This American Midwife.
Fantastic. And I am Dr. T. I'm the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club. You can find us at our new home at healthybump.club on Instagram. And as always, you can find all of our full videos on our YouTube channel, which we are about to be able to customize because we done did it and hit the mark. Come on, come on. So definitely thank you guys for stopping by. We will see you in the next episode. Bye.